Thank you, Chair. We're now live.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. Good evening to those watching at home. Welcome to the November meeting of the Ealing Council Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Steve Donnelly. I'm Vice Chair of the committee and I'm Chair of this evening's meeting. On a purely technical level, although this is by no means the first remote meeting, virtual meeting that we've run, it's the first one that we've run using and testing out the Zoom platform. So if at any point this evening we seem a bit hesitant or not quite sure of how we're doing things, it will be because we're doing those things for the first time. So I hope that everyone will be patient with us and with me in particular. Moving on to the agenda, item 1, apologies for absence and substitutions. I think we have substitutions compared with the published agenda.
We do, Chair. We've got Councillor Bazzatil in place of Councillor Ball.
Thank you very much. And no other apologies for absence. Everybody else is here. Urgent matters. I'm not aware of any urgent matters that require to be considered. Any declarations of interest to be made by members? Take that as not. Matters to be considered in private. I've not been made aware of any. Minutes. We have a bumper bundle of 2 sets of minutes relating to the two meetings that were held in October on the 21st and the 28th of October. I'll take those in turn. Minutes of the 21st of October. Can I take those as agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed.
And the minutes of the 28th of October. Can I take those as agreed?
On the 28th of October, Chair, I've received an email about the accuracy of those minutes. Just looking at the detail of it. They're talking about some mistakes in the actual report. I don't know if officers have received a copy of this email at all. There were also questions about
proposing an amendment?
Sorry?
Are you proposing amendments to the minutes, Tony?
Well, I wasn't there at the meeting, so I'm not sure whether I legally can.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's always it is always one of the difficulties of planning, which is that because we have a rotating membership, not all of us were present at the previous meeting. Particularly, anybody who was at the meeting wished to move any amendment.
Councillor Woodruff was at
those minutes.
I would say that, I mean, the minutes are quite short. They don't, sometimes we have minutes where it says, councillor so and so said this, councillor. It doesn't say that, but they are accurate for what was said.
I'm not aware of any changes, but I don't know what Councillor Young's.
Well, it was on the Manor Road development. For example, they say there was a third reason given for refusal, which was insufficient blue badge parking in the area.
Chair, if I can intervene, I think,
if I can just introduce Alison, the legal advisor,
just to say, I believe that the final wording of the refusal reasons was delegated to the planning officer in consultation with the chair, taking into account the issues that were raised at the meeting. So that was agreed at that last meeting. So those refusal reasons, I think everyone should be content with. I think, as Councillor Young points out, as he wasn't at the meeting, it would have to be somebody at the meeting pointing out any factual inaccuracies.
So
certainly
the question of this
Tony,
third reason.
Wait, if you can, I haven't called you yet, Tony, but if I just for my point of view, they seem an accurate representation of what was discussed on the night to me, and I definitely was there. And so I think all I can do is ask that the committee agree the minutes.
Yeah, can I say
They agree?
I was there and they look accurate to me. As far as I was concerned, there were only two basic reasons for refusal: the affordability and the size of the thing.
That was my understanding too.
If I may, Chair.
So, yes.
Hi,
Yes.
I put my hand up. So, is it possible to defer? Is it possible to defer the minutes for the 28th until we can rewatch the reasons for refusal for clarity? You know, refusing that.
When would you propose that we would do that rewatching?
No, I'm saying if the minutes can be deferred to the next planning committee, those who wish to raise any issues with those minutes can raise them.
Well, I'm not inclined. I mean, I take your point. I'm not inclined to that. So I'm going to move to a vote on those minutes.
Sorry, Chair.
But given that people have expressed another view, we're going to trial the. I'm going to move straight to the vote, Ray, just to try and expedite this. Those in favour of agreeing the minutes of the 28th, please use the raise hand. Tarek, please vote yes. And those who either raise your hands or press tick if you agree, and press no if you disagree. Okay, well, that's clearly carried. So the minutes are with 2 against. So those minutes are agreed. Moving on, this is exciting. We don't normally have debates about the minutes. Item 6, site visit attendance. As regulars will know, we are not, because of the coronavirus situation, engaging in site visits. Moves us on to the first item of the substantive item of this evening, 72 to 76 Broadway, West Ealing, W13 0SY. I'll hand over to the officer to present.
Good evening.
Over to you,
it's coming through now.
Turner.
Yes,
it's coming through
now. Do we all have the presentation available?
I can see it.
Okay.
Yes.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, members of the Planning Committee. I present to you this evening a mixed-use scheme comprising 4 retail units at ground floor level and 56 residential flats. The proposed building would be a part 4-storey, part 5-storey, and part 9-storey building and part 10-storey building. The 56 apartments would provide for 26 flats in a 1-bedroom configuration, 29 flats in a 2-bedroom configuration, and 1 flat in a 3-bedroom configuration. The application site is located within West Ealing on the Broadway. The site is designated as within the Ealing Metropolitan Centre, and the ground floor of the building currently provides an active frontage to the street. To the rear of the site, vehicle manoeuvring and car parking exists. The sites to the rear consist of predominantly residential uses, with Hugh Clark House being a low-rise residential building comprising 49 predominantly single occupancy units. The site has a PTAL score of 5, owing to its prominent position within the Metropolitan Centre and access to high-frequency bus services and the West Ealing Crossrail station. The site is designated within the EAL15 development site as identified within the development site's DPD. The West Ealing Centre neighbourhood plan also refers to the development site as WEC9. The development site's DPD identifies that the existing buildings are a monotonous and monolithic terrace that provide little contribution to the vitality of West Ealing and poorly reflect the interesting variations in built form and height in the street scene. In respect to the height of the building is considered to be consistent with the developing character of this area of West Ealing. Council has previously granted developments near the site, including 96 to 102 Broadway, which is a Part 11 and Part 15-storey development, and 104 to 110 Broadway, which is a Part 8, Part 11-storey development. The context of these applications in relation to the application site is shown on your screen now. By virtue of the height of the building, the application was referred to the GLA at Stage 1 level, who are supportive of the overall design, scale, bulk, and height of the building. The application will be subject to Stage 2 referral. The proposed residential accommodation would provide compliant internal areas as defined by the Technical Housing Standards, the Mayor's Housing SPG, and Policy 3.5 of the London Plan. Technical daylight sunlight assessments demonstrate that internal living areas would have good access to daylight sunlight and outlook, and further details will be supplied by way of planning condition to address issues relating to ventilation, overheating, and cooling. Private amenity spaces will be provided in accordance with Policy 7D of the Ealing Development Management DPD. The proposal makes good use of rooftop spaces to provide communal amenity space that will be accessible for all residents. The creation of green spaces on rooftops also works to soften the appearance of the building when viewed from the front and rear of the site. Council's landscape architect is supportive of the scheme in relation to children's play space areas and quality and quantity of spaces subject to conditions and Section 106 contributions. In terms of affordable housing, this would be provided at a rate of 39.3% by unit and 37% by habitable room. The tenure split of the affordable housing would be in favour of London affordable rent, with a split of 53% against 47% shared ownership, calculated by habitable room. In terms of transport issues, Council's Transport Planning Officer has reviewed the scheme and is supportive of the proposal subject to conditions and Section 106 contributions towards projects in the local area. The accessibility of Crossrail, high-frequency buses and cycle parking provision would encourage a modal shift to more sustainable forms of transportation, such as walking, cycling and public transport. Council's Energy Officer is highly supportive of the proposed scheme, which would result in site-wide CO2 reductions of 74.57%, being achieved through lean and green energy measures. Details of the energy consultant's assessment of the revised energy strategy are detailed within the briefing note. Overall, the principle of the development is considered to be acceptable, and the design of the development would represent an improvement to the character and appearance of the area. The height of the building is considered to be consistent with the objectives of design policy, as well as the development site's DPD and the West Ealing Centre Neighbourhood Plan. The proposal would contribute to that borough's housing stock and provide genuinely affordable homes to meet the needs of residents of Ealing. It is recommended that the application be approved subject to conditions, Section 106 agreement and Stage 2 referral to the GLA. I would also draw members' attention to the briefing note, which provides an outline of the Section 106 contributions and obligations sought, which have been agreed by the applicant. The briefing note also outlines comments in regard to the revised energy strategy. It should also be noted that 3 additional objections, including one this morning to which many members would have been sent a copy. The points of each objection are outlined within the briefing note with officer comments provided. And just for one point of clarification on the briefing note in regards to the carbon offset contribution, this is paid at the commencement of the development, and upon final occupation of the development, this sum is reviewed and can change upwards or downwards depending on the outcome of the scheme and depending on the second assessment that is undertaken once the building is occupied. I am happy to take any questions.
Is it possible to see what the site currently currently looks like.
Hello.
I just will load up the presentation again. I shouldn't have brought that down. I'm sorry. Slideshow. So I do not, I mean, this is the closest I can get to it. I do not have a photo of it, unfortunately. I apologize for that. But this is the, the context between the proposal and the existing development.
Okay.
Sorry, is the chair, Steve, are you there? You're on mute, Cord.
Yes, Ray.
Right,
yes,
sorry.
Ray.
I just wondered if you were calling us or you were just...
Oh, yeah. That's a very good point. I never turn myself on to mute, and this is why. Anyway, where are we? Councillor Dubrovska.
Thank you. I'd like to raise a few issues. The officer mentioned with regards to the energy shortfall, and I was just wondering why the energy shortfall is not in the table of the financial section 106 contribution. And I appreciate any changes, but in the briefing notes, you also mentioned 29,000. So I think for completion, it should be added to the table. And also, with regards to this energy shortfall, what is the council proposing to use this financial contribution to mitigate this energy shortfall? I've also got a question with regards to the daylight report. In the report, it mentions a lot about the daylight within the building, but it doesn't mention anything other than it's negligible, shadowing the retirement home, which is the Hugh Clark house. And if the officer can put the slide where it had this sort of the 3D, so bird's eye view, that one. Yeah, that one. The shade from the tall buildings, I think, I don't believe are actually true, especially during winter months when the sun is lower. I think that the retirement home behind will suffer greatly from the lack of daylight and sunlight. And also, if I may, on page, where is it? Page 15 of 37, I would like to double check with regards to the angle of more than 25 degrees, then a more detailed check is needed to find the loss of skylight to the existing buildings. I don't believe the assessment is true to the actual location. I think the extreme overshadowing and blocking daylight to the retirement home, where the inhabitants, the residents, are elderly, and vitamin D is there's a huge deficiency in vitamin D in this country, so it'll be foolish to overshadow. And also, I would like to ask how many flats are proposed to be only north facing, if I can have an answer to that. So there's 3 points there. Thank you.
Well, I think that last one is answered within the briefing note that came out this afternoon, but I'm sure the officer will be able to cover that. Normally I'd take several people and group them together, but because Councillor Dubrovska had a lot of questions there, perhaps if you can deal with all of those first, Joel.
Yes, Councillor Dubrovska's mentioned there was 3 points, but I have a few more, so I will try and get through all of them. In terms of that contribution not being included in the table, I provided that slightly separately because it required a bit more explanation. So the other ones don't require so much of an explanation. That's why they're provided in the table. This can obviously be changed very easily, but it's basically because that particular contribution required a bit more explanation. In terms of what the contribution is used for, perhaps, Steve, you might be able to come in on that. I'm not exactly sure what they're used for, but I believe they're used for carbon offsetting projects, various projects in the area. In terms of the daylight sunlight report, the officer's report does note that there is some impact on Hugh Clark House that does not comply with the relevant guidelines, but still retain a significant amount of light into those properties. There is also a shadowing report which sort of does not show significant shadowing of that building either. So in terms of the calculations provided, the council brought into question the calculations. I mean, the calculations were done in accordance with the relevant modelling and performed by a relevant expert in the field. So we're confident those calculations are correct. On the north-facing apartments, there are 22 north-facing apartments, though they're not. Only two of these are single aspect north facing, and these are the ones on the ground floor. The ones on the upper floor do have side windows facing, making them dual aspect. Though to sort of follow a cautious basis, we did request the daylight sunlight adequacy report, which showed full compliance on the northern elevation of the building.
Thank you. Mr. Barton, do you want to anything to add on that first point?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I can confirm the explanation given is correct, and essentially it's used for retrofitting other properties. So the money will be used, put into a central pot, and will be used to try and achieve energy efficiency as on other buildings.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on. I've got Lauren Wall, Ray Wall, and Chris Summers. So Lauren Wall, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just go to the sorry, I'm just trying to find my notes because I didn't expect it called so quickly. But the reduced rents on page 34 of the report. Can I just clarify that these rents are reduced simply because of the smaller space that the new units will be taking up, and not that there's any sort of subsidy involved?
I think I know what you're referring to in terms of. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you hold the thought for a minute, I'll pick up 2 or 3 questions. Ray Wall.
Hello, Chair. Sorry. So can I just go to page 16 and 37 about the breakdown of tenure, quality of residential accommodation. So table 3, the policy is a 60-40 split, my understanding. And it says in the words that we've met that, but in the table, it doesn't say. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong table there. Sorry, I'm talking about tenure split, and I've got the wrong part of the. We're both like this at here because we're flustered, I think. Sorry, here we go. Page 12. So affordable housing. So in the paragraph preceding the 2 tables, it says that we've met the 60-40, but yet the tables don't show that. It says 50-50, or if we're being generous on Hampton Rooms, 53-47. Why do we say we've met the 60-40 when we haven't? It's one question. And in terms of the daylight sunlight issue, so I make it that 10% of the properties do not make this ADF factor, the average daylight factor, and then there's the BRE guidelines on the other page. So we have some rooms or apartments that do not meet those factors. Why are we considering having that in a development of this scale?
Okay, thank you. And Chris Summers, and then I'll move to get responses.
Yeah, question is based on that slide that we're looking at now, the aerial view. I'm just wondering why that wall, which I think is the east facing wall, has got no windows in it. And is it because there's a possibility that the building next door might be developed and those windows will be blocked out? I'm just curious because, obviously letting more light.
Okay, Joel, do you want to pick up
those
those
all the points?
3 sets of questions? Yes, please.
So Councillor Lorimer was referring, I believe, to the commercial properties on the ground floor and the statement in regards to them being reduced rent. So that basically comes in from their commercial strategy that they submitted. They are finding it difficult to rent these properties because they are sort of quite deep, and therefore there's a lot of unused space in there. And on a square meterage basis, the rent is significantly higher, and therefore the idea is to respond to changing market trends in retail, but to provide smaller environments that will attract new retailers to the area based on there being a smaller rent component to those commercial units in comparison to today. Councillor Ray Wall mentioned the tenure split. I'm just trying to find what part it states it proposal comply with this requirement.
Major brand.
Okay. All right. I mean, that is a slight error on my behalf in the report, so I do apologise for that. But in terms of the affordable housing by habitable rooms, we are getting a significant amount of social rented apartments as part of this, so it doesn't quite comply with the 60/40, but it is still a significantly high amount. In terms of the light into the rooms, the way I understand it is there's on the southern elevation of the building, there's a few rooms that come off the recessed balconies. Now, obviously, with recessed balconies, we can't. There's obviously going to be the room at the base of that recessed balcony is not going to have as much access to daylight. The alternative is to provide balconies that come out from the building, but that wouldn't be appropriate in a metropolitan town centre because that would push the building envelope back from the street and wouldn't be consistent with the prevailing pattern of development. And these rooms are bedrooms, and we're more concerned in most cases with lights going into living rooms and kitchens. In terms of Councillor Summers, in regards to the wall there, that is correct. The site that adjoins this property is also part of that same development site. So it's reasonable to expect that something may come forward in the future on that site, and therefore we don't want to compromise the developability of that particular site.
Thank you. I've got 2 hands up there before. Councillor Dabrowska and then Ray Wall, if that's a new hand. So Councillor Dabrowska.
Thank you. The officer just mentioned that the rooms at the front are bedrooms, or mostly bedrooms, and he's more concerned about the light going into the kitchen and lounge. Can you just clarify that? I'm not understanding why you have selected bedrooms over lounge and kitchen to receive sunlight, daylight. I mean, what's your argument there? Thank you.
Ray,
I haven't really.
Sorry, Ray, was that another?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Chair, I just want to come back on Steve's point about offsetting the energy to other buildings. Can you expand on what you mean by other buildings in terms of, is that council buildings or is it private buildings or what is it? Just expand on that, please, Steve.
Okay.
So I will attend to Councillor Dabrowska's point. In terms of the non-compliance, it is quite low, and if we are to select between a bedroom and a kitchen living room having a greater level of light, the living room is more lived in than the bedroom. So this principle, I mean, there is obvious non-compliance, but with every scheme, you're never going to get 100% compliance with the BRE guidelines.
Apologies. I did. Either the connection skipped. I missed the word you said is more what? Light for bedrooms is more what?
I mean, light for the living areas is more lived in.
Lived in. Okay.
Occupants of a property will spend more time in the living room and the kitchen than they will in their bedrooms. So in terms of the non-compliance, it is quite low, as the report outlines. But nevertheless, you're never going to achieve 100% compliance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, your hand is there. Is that a residual hand or a new hand?
Oh, yes, I will take it down.
That's okay. Thanks. It's obviously, yeah, if people can remember to take them down if they can. I know I'm always bad at doing that. I don't see any more hands up, so
yeah,
Steve, move on.
Steve,
sorry, Ray. Yeah.
Barton. I've still got the question to Steve Barton.
Oh yes, I beg your pardon, Steve.
Thank you, Chair. I was just waiting to be called. Yeah, I can confirm I'm not responsible for the programme. It's not something which my team deals with. But yes, I think you're absolutely right, Councillor Ray Wall. The intention would be the bulk of the proceeds would be spent on council stock.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we can move on from the questions. So I think, Joe, you can unshare now, and we can. Those who wish to activate their cameras for the purposes of the debate and discussion, feel free to do so. Do I see any contributions for the debate? I don't. I mean, quite as ever, quite a lot of what people have covered in questions will tend to cover their concerns. Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that I think it's a perfectly reasonable application. You know, it would have been nice to have a site visit, but, you know, going up and down the Uxbridge Road, I'm vaguely aware of what is currently there. I think it would be an improvement. And I think the housing tenure mix is acceptable. Certainly better than the one we had that argument with at the last meeting.
Thank you, Ray Wall.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll be brief because I think that Chris has said what I was reasonably going to say. I think that I'm not worried about the height of this building. I don't think it's extremely high building, or it has too many issues with it. The only issues I think we flagged up in questions, which were the lack of daylight in some of the rooms, that was answered, and the affordable rent section. So the affordable rent is good as far as I'm concerned, and I will be voting in favour of this.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to contribute at this point before we move to the vote? Tony Young?
Just want to say I'm concerned about the quality of the housing. I think the lack of light to the living rooms is going to be quite detrimental to anybody living there. I should be voting against it.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else wish to participate? Okay, I think we can move on. I think from my perspective, notwithstanding the reasonable points been made about north facing and single aspect, it seems that attempts have been made to make the best of an architecturally more challenging situation. I don't see any planning grounds to turn this down. So in the normal way, before I proceed to the vote, just to remind you that in order to participate, you must have been present throughout the debate. So if you lost your signal for any substantive length of time, for example, you shouldn't take part in the vote. Does that apply to anyone? No? Okay, so this is the first time we'll have voted using Zoom. So just a reminder, if you're voting in favour of the proposal, use the yes green tick button. If you're voting against the proposal, not quite, wait for it. If you're voting against the proposal, use the no button, the red cross. If you wish to abstain, use the raise hand button. So if everybody can vote roughly at the same time, it obviously will be helpful. Vote now. Okay, I think everyone has voted. So if I can ask the clerk to confirm the result and summarise which members voted for and against.
So we have 12 that have voted for and 1 person has voted against. So it was Councillor Anthony Young that's voted against. Would you like me to confirm the names of those who have voted for? Or?
No, I think in the circumstances with such a result, it would be acceptable. That the rest of the committee voted for, Councillor Young voted against. I think that much is clear. Thank you very much. I think we can clear the hands, clear the votes.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I can't even clear my own vote. That is just a matter of technology. Brilliant. Okay, moving on to the next topic on the agenda. Got to go back on my agenda. The next item is 63 North Acton Road, Park Royal, NW10 6PJ. Can I ask officer to present? Wade?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Just bear with me 1 second. Is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Brilliant. Okay. Good evening, Chair, members, and all those listening in. Before we start, I would just like to clarify that due to the scheme providing just under 10,000 square meters of B1C, B2, and B8 use classes, the scheme would be determined by Ealing in accordance with the scheme of delegation of the OPDC, and this has been confirmed with the OPDC. I just thought it'd be worth clarifying that early on. The application site is located within a designated strategic industrial location of Park Royal, as marked in blue on the image to the right of the screen. The site is located on the corner of North Acton Road to the west and Everett Road to the south. To the west across North Acton Road is a pocket of residential properties bordered by strategic industrial land on all sides. There's a row of terraced houses that front onto North Acton Road across from the application site. And further to the north, on the other side of Dewar House, is the Wesley playing fields. The application site is contained within a rectangular plot that measures approximately 1,664 square meters. To the rear, outlined in blue, is the neighboring site, which received planning consent from the OPDC in 2018 for industrial-related redevelopment as well. Here is a closer view of the site in relation to its surrounding uses, just to provide a bit more context. The existing buildings on site currently comprise a used car showroom to the front, a large function room to the center, and a workshop to the rear. The existing buildings are industrial in character, with a series of sloped sawtooth pitched roofs and a flat canopy roof to the front. The showroom cars currently park within the front unit and to the front forecourt of the site, with vehicle access currently off North Acton Road via a large vehicle crossover shown on that image. Pedestrian access is off both North Acton Road and Everett Road. This is the rear of the site for a bit more context. The proposal is for the demolition of the existing buildings and redevelopment of the site for industrial-led purposes, consisting of a Part 3, Part 5, and Part 7 story building with a basement level, designed to deliver a co-located mix of space for a variety of potential light industrial, general industrial, and or storage and distribution end users. There's also a small cafe proposed on the southwestern corner, along with ancillary management offices for the building as a whole, and associated basement parking, cycle parking, and bin stores. Vehicle access would be off North Acton Road. This image probably provides it better. Albeit from a slightly smaller vehicle crossover, being 6 meters wide as opposed to the existing 10, down into a parking, loading and parking area at the basement level. This would be controlled with a traffic light system to ensure safety. 2 cargo lifts are proposed that would transport goods to all levels of the building from the basement. And there are 4 stair cores and 1 passenger lift linking the basement ground and the rest of the floors. It should be noted that since the publication of the recommendation report, the proposed plans have been amended slightly to resolve a small inaccuracy between the elevations and the section plans. Changes include confirmation of the material used for the roof enclosure being aluminium cladding as opposed to glazing, which is considered a more appropriate material for the roof enclosure in this area. Changes also include a slight reduction in the floor to ceiling height of the 6th floor from 3.7 down to 3.2 meters. The proposed industrial floor space as part of the scheme would comprise a little over 8,000 square meters, which represents a 660% increase in industrial floor space. This floor space would be divided across units with varying floor to ceiling heights that could accommodate a wide variety of end users, including smaller spaces for more affordable units. By increasing both the quality and quantity of industrial floor space within this designated sill, the proposal would clearly assist in intensifying the site for appropriate policy compliant industrial uses, whilst maximizing the efficient use of brownfield land, and would provide greater industrial capacity within the sill. The proposal would therefore be compliant with the National Planning Policy Framework, the current London Plan, and particularly the emerging draft London Plan in this regard, meeting an identified need for industrial capacity within the borough. The principle of a development is therefore considered acceptable. The proposed scheme would incorporate a contemporary industrial design while still referencing more traditional features and materials that are existing in the wider industrial area. The building would be constructed mainly of bromo brick, aluminium windows, and vertical glass louvers, which add further visual interest to the building. The design of the scheme has been carefully considered to ensure it is robust and suitable for its intended use and the existing environment, both internally and externally. The height, scale, and massing, despite being larger than some of the other surrounding buildings, are considered to respond positively to the existing character of the area. The building steps away from the residential properties across North Acton Road, preventing the scheme from being visually dominant when viewed from the street scene, with the front 3-story element comparable in height to the neighboring developments. The proposed building would be set back from the front boundary line by between 7.5 and 10.7 meters, maintaining the current stepped boundary line of properties along this road. With this additional space, the applicant seeks to improve the front forecourt of the site and provide a new pedestrian pavement along Everett Road, which currently does not have one. These improvements include hard and soft landscaping with permeable paving, raised planter benches, short stay cycle parking, and the possibility for outdoor seating for the cafe. This would not only provide a more welcoming and visually appealing street frontage to the side, but would also act as a soft buffer between the industrial building and the residential properties to the west. Additionally, the proposed pavement along Everett Road would improve pedestrian safety for those accessing not only this site, but those to the rear as well. The impact of the scheme on adjacent residential occupiers has been assessed. It is considered that there would be no undue impacts on privacy or overlooking due to the proposed separation distances, and because any direct overlooking would be over an established highway. Some residents would have an unavoidably altered outlook from their properties. However, this is not considered to be detrimental, particularly given the proposed setbacks and the site's allocation as a strategic industrial location. In addition, the scheme is considered generally to improve the visual amenity of the space. A sunlight and daylight assessment has been submitted with the application. From the results of this analysis, it is evident that there would be a reduction in the amount of daylight reaching some of the windows and rooms of properties along North Acton Road. However, when the magnitude of reduction is considered alongside the retained levels of natural light, it is evident that all of the rooms would remain adequately lit. The impact has therefore been assessed as minor overall in this regard. It is also worth noting at this point that since the submission of the application, the plans have been amended to further increase the building setbacks at almost all levels, therefore only further mitigating the potential impacts on neighbouring properties above that what was assessed. There were 21 representations received from residents during the course of the public consultation. Of these representations, 20 objected to the proposal, while 1 was in support. Matters raised in these objections include the proposed height and bulk, the potential loss of sunlight and daylight and privacy, the potential increase for traffic and parking congestion, some road safety concerns, and concerns around increased noise and pollution. There was also some comments about the proposal being out of character with the area. In response to these objections, the officer myself has noted them in the reports and has considered them very carefully in the assessment. The impact of the proposal on amenity has been considered and deemed to be acceptable in this case, subject to appropriately worded conditions that seek to minimize the potential impacts of the proposal. It has been concluded that the matters raised do not outweigh the recommendation for approval in this case. All other matters, including environmental health, transport matters, servicing, energy, and sustainability, have all been assessed and found acceptable. The proposal is therefore consistent with the aims and the relevant adopted policies and documents of the local plan, relevant supplementary planning guidance, the National Planning Policy Framework, and emerging planning policy documents. It is therefore recommended that planning permission be granted, subject to the completion of a Section 106 agreement and conditions of consent. Thank you.
Thank you, Wade. If I can ask you to take down your screen share while we hear from our objector, and then bring it back up when we get to the questions, please. Okay. Sure. We have an objector to speak on this, which is Mr. Robin Brown. If I can ask Mr. Brown to come forward, you'll see rather alarming online stopwatch there to let you know how much time you have left. You have 3 minutes. If I can ask you to begin when you're comfortable and when you're ready, please.
Can everyone hear me?
I can certainly hear you.
Okay, right. And you start, do you? You press the start button. Is that right? I'm ready.
Yeah, well, once you start, the button will be pressed.
Okay, right. Clearly, I'm Robin Brown, and for much of my life, I've lived in North Acton and am very familiar with Park Royal. Currently, I support the Grand Union Alliance, a community network of some 200 groups, businesses, and individuals trying to influence the planning of Old Oak and Park Royal. Teresa McGee, chair of the Wesley Estate Residents Association, asked me to assist in making representation. She stresses that local representations ought to be seen in the round and not individually dissected. Cumulatively, then it will be found that the proposal is a gross overdevelopment, as insufficient on-site servicing and parking would be unduly dominant and would set an undesirable precedent for Park Royal. which is already congested, polluted, and inefficiently functioning for both residents and businesses. I've grown up with Park Royal and seen its changing fortunes, wax and wane, and the different regeneration efforts. Now we have the policy of intensification, but it is the degree of intensification by this proposal that I wish to challenge. How intense that ought to be, that I wish the committee to consider. Tonight, by approving, you will set an unfortunate precedent. One, that because of public sector decision-making principles of fulfilling legitimate expectations and administrative consistency will be reflected in further decisions on redevelopment elsewhere in Park Royal. It will mean that sites that already have a high coverage by buildings, as most do in this part of Park Royal, can be redeveloped, increasing their floor space by a factor of nearly 7 times. A 660% increase in industrial floor space is quoted in the executive summary. And all this will be in a building virtually built out to its side edges, with no indication of how articulated lorries may satisfactorily service the site, something that Transport Services have asked for in respect of number 63. Repetition of this precedent will do much harm to the already difficult environment, amenities and operating conditions of Park Royal. Existing businesses are already faced with difficult short-term leases and increasing rentals because landlords hope to have vacant possession for redevelopment. This proposal, by its sheer intensity, a near 7-fold increase, will make this much worse. That each application is said to be considered on its own merits is straight-jacketed by this proposal, which sets an unacceptable benchmark for intensification. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. If we can have the presentation back now, please, while we do questions. And Mr. Brown, can I commend you on the perfect nature of your timing, which is very rare to see on these occasions. Absolutely textbook.
I spent all afternoon.
It's even people who practice generally overrun, so that I'm very impressed. So over to the committee. I've got Councillor Mahmood has indicated first. Do you want to get us underway, Tariq?
Yeah. Okay. Just to my clarification about that industrial development. Can you just clarify? Is it, when you said basement, is it underground car park, or are they industrial unit or storage in basement?
Okay.
Can I respond?
Yes, I don't see any other hands up at the minute, so just
sure.
Fire away.
Okay, so the basement level would not serve industrial units. It would serve as parking and loading and servicing, as well as bin storage. So these panel vans that are shown on the basement floor level would be the vans that would service the units above via the 2 cargo lifts and the passenger lift. So there would be no servicing for the industrial uses or loading at street level. It would all be done at basement level. So it serves not only as parking, but also as loading and servicing, as well as the cycle storage and the disabled car parkings.
So, Chair, can I ask the question through you?
Yeah.
So how many car parking spaces apart from disabled car parking?
Yeah, Wade, do you want to answer the question about how many parking spaces?
Sure, there would be 9 panel van parking spaces with 4 disabled regular parking spaces.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just everybody has gone shy. I don't see many other questions. I mean, I had a question on the report, which has been answered in the briefing note, which is about the lifts and occupancy, but that's been dealt with. I had Councillor Dubrovska.
Yes, I've got a small question. Because it's in the sort of Park Royal sort of gateway sort of industrial site with some residential, because this is an expansion of a current site, or I suppose an addition on the site, why wasn't there any Section 106 contribution toward the North Acton station? Unless we have enough funds already to improve the disability and other accessibility features of upgrading North Acton station. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, please.
No problem. So the Section 106 contributions that we've asked for, we felt were appropriate for this scheme. When we ask for contributions, they have to be very specific to the impacts of the scheme, and in this case, they were related mainly to highways and cycle route improvements and the energy monitoring contributions, and that's why they've been focused on those rather than others.
And just on the North Acton point, I mean, it's some considerable distance from North Acton station, and Harleston station is in fact the local station. Is that a factor in determining that prioritisation?
There would certainly be a factor. I think if we were going to look for contributions for that sort of thing, it would be stations a lot closer to the site. But again, in this case, the contributions that we ask for do have to be very specific. And if we felt that that station was going to be detrimentally impacted on, we would then look for a contribution to mitigate those impacts. But we did not feel that in this case.
Thank you. Just looking for further hands. I don't see any, so I think we can move to the discussion. So I think you can take down the presentation now, Wade. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, looking for contributions for the discussion. I've got Chris Summers to kick us off.
Yes, I'm going to be quite brief, but I think the application will be an improvement on the current site. You know, as I'm thinking, especially for the residents living opposite, I think it'll be an improvement. But I do think the building lacks imagination. It is a shame that, you know, architects can't, you know, come up with something more imaginative than basically a big brick block with some glass. I don't think it's going to win any architectural awards, but it's not offensive. It's functional, and I guess that's, you know, what it's going to do. It's also hopefully going to employ lots of people. So, or not employ, but be a place for employment. So I'm minded to vote for it.
Thank you. Tariq Mahmood.
Chair, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to, I know this is a OPDC designated industrial area, but I'm just thinking about that 60% increase in terms of size and the mask than before. That is something I'm just thinking about, that why it has been increased that much than before.
You're looking for an answer to that?
If
it's a rhetorical question, or yeah. Well, probably, yeah. Do you want to come back on that, Wade?
I'm happy to answer if it's appropriate. So there will be two reasons why we've looked, or why the applicants looked to. Brilliant. There'll be two reasons why we would support at that level of increase. I think the first would be just to point out the recent or the policy shift per se from the 2016 London Plan to the emerging draft London Plan based on evidence through the West London ELR and the Industrial Land Survey, which has moved Ealing away from the previous category of managed release industrial land into, for the first time, provide capacity category. And this is due to an identified need for us to increase industrial floor space within the borough. And the only way we can do that is by intensifying already consolidated industrial sites like still sites. It's very difficult to accommodate additional industrial floor space anywhere else. And secondly, the second reason would be is part of the viability of the scheme. Reducing the floor space significantly would affect the viability, and then it may be a case where the scheme couldn't be brought forward at all. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Anyone else want to speak before we move to a conclusion? Okay, we'll move forward. Just in summing up and say, this is, I know the area well, and I think in recent times been characterised more by decline than by new development. And the premises include perhaps the place most complained about in the whole of the East Acton ward, the loss of which I think would be considered no bad thing by most local residents. And I think on balance this is an improvement on what we have at the moment. So I'm going to move to the vote. As before, if you wish to vote in favour of the proposal, press yes, the green tick. If you're voting against the proposal, press no, the red cross. And if you are abstaining, raise the hand function. Vote now.
Okay, Chair, so we have 13 yeses.
That is a unanimous vote in favour. Thank you very much, everybody. That brings us to the end of the business for this evening. The date of the next meeting is the 16th of December. Thank you to everybody who's helped put this meeting together. And thank you to members for their patience, and thank you to the public for watching. And I hope everybody will stay safe until we next see each other. Good evening.